Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your sun in Aries and Cancer rising. This combination is fire and water, and both of these elements are emotional in their own way. I feel that this is a rather complicated and difficult combination to possess, and you may find that one of the themes of your life is feeling that you are constantly misunderstood because of the way that you present yourself. It's so different than who you aspire to become that these two signs are cardinal signs and they clash with one another, they square off, and this can mean that it creates a bit of tension, and there's like a discordance between your appearance, the way that you interact with others when you're in a social situation, and how you wish to be. And because both of these are connected with emotion, this is a very volatile combination. And I would say the same if the two signs were reversed and the sun was in Cancer and Aries rising. There are going to be differences with that, and I will do a separate video on that combination. But suffice it to say that you may feel that sometimes life is hard because of how you come across, and maybe that isn't well received. But I do think that in a lot of cases, you may bring it on yourself because you're acting in a certain way. And part of this is because the cardinal modality is about being a catalyst, being an initiator. And when it is expressed in a lower way, or you could say like in a lower vibration, this can be bossiness. This can be somebody who's very controlling. When the person is balanced and they have this cardinal energy in their personal points, they can be a lot more self-confident and know that the only person they can really control is themselves, and very self-motivated, and some, self-actualized. So they may be highly ambitious, but they're not trying to get there. They're not power hungry per se. They just want to, achieve as much as they can because they want to experience that expansion. And speaking of expansion, since Aries is a fire sign, it is connected with expansion. Cancer is a water sign, and water puts out fire. So, sometimes people will say that if you have a couple and one person is water and one person is fire, you may see that the water person has a habit of dousing out the dreams and desires of the fire sign person. And then I think I heard somebody say that fire, when it combines with water, produces steam. So kind of implying this anger, when you say somebody's steamed up. And yeah, fire can do that to water because it can be kind of insensitive. Well, what happens when it's within one person and they have both of these things going on? That can certainly be somebody who comes across in a contradictory way, to some degree, and that can make it. That's another reason why other people may scratch their heads and be like, "What is this person all about?" Now, let's talk about the rising sign first. in Cancer. So Cancer is a cardinal water sign, and Cancer people are motivated by love and their relationships and being the nurturer. Cancer rules the fourth house of home and family and is the sign of the mother. So even for male Cancers, there is this tendency to want to take care of others. You might have a Cancer male who, if he makes less money than his wife, she might be the breadwinner and he may be very happy to be the house husband or the stay-at-home dad, and he might do a darn good job at it too. Maybe he likes to cook and do other domestic things. But this is the rising sign, so to me this is kind of the vestige of childhood. This is the influence from childhood. And I have always said that I think that Cancer rising can indicate children who are crybabies. And what I mean by that are children who are easily, when children are young and they are among their peers, and if they get teased and they just like completely show that they are hurt, or even if it's with adults and they're being asked to do something or even chastised, that they just automatically dissolve into a puddle. There might be times when this is actually manipulation, and that's something that Cancer pro at. And this can be something that might be a defense mechanism within yourself, where to get out of some kind of situation where you're trying to save face. And so, like, in other words, a facet of the ego. You've done something that you know you shouldn't have done, and then when somebody calls you on it, you act hurt. And that's a form of guilting. And the other person, if they're a decent person, they might back off and they might even question themselves. It's almost like gaslighting, like acting like the other person is the perpetrator when actually they're just, telling you what you did that they didn't like, and you just throw it back on them in a sense. These kinds of things happen because there's a very strong self-protective streak in Cancer as a whole, but in the ascendant, I think it really shows up big time. And that's because just in general, Cancer it can be hypersensitive because it is the sign of the crab, and the crab has a hard shell that it ducks into when it needs to put on that armor. But, so the whole modus operandi, or however you pronounce it, is to protect itself from any kind of attack. And it's a very interesting kind of contradictory nature with Cancer, because sometimes Cancers can come off very aggressive themselves. And even I've witnessed that myself. And then they're the ones, when we have that saying, they can, you can dish it out, but you can't take it, where they can dish it out. Now, I will say that Cancer can be an exceptionally sensitive sign too towards others. So it all depends on the individual Cancer, because some Cancers may have inner planets in Aries, for instance, that make them more aggressive because, for instance, they could have Mars in Aries, or they might have the Leo, which is adjacent to them, planets in Leo with their personal planets that make them, that masculine energy can make them more aggressive. But in any case, in general, what we can say is that you may be a person who perceives yourself constantly under threat, and this may go back to childhood, because I really do link the rising sign to conditioning during childhood. And you may have been the child who was in the dysfunctional family system, the one that was feeling everything. I don't know what that one is called, the mascot. I can't remember the name. And feeling the feelings of the rest of the family that wouldn't acknowledge their feelings. So you may wear your heart on your sleeve. When you have your rising sign in Cancer, the ruler of Cancer is the moon, so that is your ruler. One of the big things when somebody has the moon as a ruler is they might be moody. And that means that your emotions can vary day to day. Of course, that's true for all of us, but not everyone is so transparent with their emotions that they're going to show up so blatantly. And for cancers, this is really, for Cancer risings, this is really front and center with you. And that can, create problems in and of itself, regardless of what the sun sign is, because a person who is ruled by the moon is associated in astrology with inconstancy or change. So there can be a fluctuation happening. And it might be a little bit too frequently. You have to look to the moon sign of this combination to get a better handle on how this may play out. If the moon is in Gemini, it can increase the instability factor. Or if the moon is in a fire sign, the person may be less sensitive than you would typically think. If the moon is in a water sign, then watch out. The person is probably going to be very much like that Cancer ascendant compared to Aries sun sign. And Aries is a very powerful sign, so it's very easy for the Aries influence to overpower other personal points in the chart, like the rising sign, for instance. But I think in this case, it's really something where it might be like sometimes you're more like your sun sign, sometimes you're more like the ascendant. Maybe it's just with certain people. The sun sign can make the person more comfortable, being that extroverted person around their friends, but you might not be an extrovert overall because your rising sign is in water, and you may just have a tendency to withhold what you're thinking or feeling, even with people that you trust implicitly. You might just want to kind of, I think, Aries tends to want to be this tough guy. And the problem is that you have a prominent water sign as your rising sign. And it can make you feel like you're just being thrown out to the wolves and you're not protected very well. So I think that this combination, because Aries can be so strong, can almost be like the reverse combination. And with Aries, it's always like, what are you looking at? There's always like this combative energy with Aries. With the rising sign in Cancer, it can be much more almost like the victim. You don't give me attention. You didn't acknowledge me when I walked into the room. There's always this feeling of like not being accusatory and towards others about what they didn't do on your behalf. And because of that, it can sometimes create rifts with an employer, a friend, maybe a partner, and the person may have a good right to be like, talking about the other person being neglectful in some way. But by the same token, there just seems to be this tendency for Cancer, this combination, to go on the offensive. And not only if somebody isn't returning your affections, let's put it that way, because you may feel like it's not fair. We've been dating, and like if you're in a relationship with someone, you're saying, we've been dating, why are you not calling me every day? Why aren't you proposing to me? And that the Cancer ascendant is a feminine energy, because Cancer is a water sign. Water signs are feminine along with Earth. And it can simply mean that there is a receptivity, a passivity. The masculine signs, the fire and the air signs, are aggressive. They're taking the action. The water signs like Cancer are receiving. And so there's this built-in thing within yourself in terms of the acceptance that you get is like waiting to be acknowledged. And so that can fly in the face of what it is. Like maybe for some people, they're too shy to really pursue that. And the bottom line is that if we look at careers, I do feel like the sun is quite influential, but I also feel like the rising sign can make us attractive to certain people. So that's another thing. You have to look at your Venus and Mars and also the moon sign to find out, who are you attracted to yourself? What type of person? And what is your Venus and Mars? And even the rising sign in terms of the appearance, because somebody with Cancer rising, they can have a moon face. So a famous Cancer sun sign who has this is Linda Ronstadt. And even when she was younger, she had this. I mean, of course, does your face really change? But I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is that I don't know if Linda has a water sign as the ascendant. People with water sign ascendants in general can retain water, so they can see their weight fluctuate quite a bit day to day, and it may really look a lot different one day to the next if they haven't had much water. But there are ways to counter that as well. It's just interesting that could be partly what is going on in certain cases. Venus I'm sorry, I said Venus rising. Cancer rising with the sun in Aries can be false advertising. You may be a lot more fierce than you let on. And this can lead to making you seem that you are different than what you really are. Of course, that's because of the aspect itself. It's going to be perhaps a challenge to really put yourself in that role of being vulnerable, and yet at the same time not really wanting to be that way. It can actually be to the point where where you may have a lot of anger because of what happened to you. Maybe you felt like you were never encouraged to do what made you happy. And this combination, in a way, might be good for somebody who is a teacher, especially an early childhood teacher, because you can really encourage creativity in children and want them to express themselves through their artwork or the written word or whatever. The sun being the aspirational self means that this person is ambitious, but fire energy is creative, and the water element is creative too. And it's kind of like transmuting those emotions, and it can be very personal. The 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 art that is generated that is based on memories. Cancer rules the past and history through that fourth house, childhood. And so this is great for an early childhood teacher. And also the nurturing angle. I think the biggest liability of this combination is your emotional nature. You may at times be combative with that Aries energy, but also the fact that Cancer is a cardinal sign can make you want to do something when you are upset. It's hard to just kind of feel your feelings. It's like, should I storm out of this place? Should I just, pitch a fit? And um, in some cases, I mean, I would say this would be even more so the case if Aries is on the ascendant and Cancer is a sun sign, where I was going to say that it's easier to express anger than sorrow, than sadness or hurt, because Aries is the god of war. So, not wanting to show vulnerability. But because Cancer's on the ascendant, you may show vulnerability, but it's probably more of a manipulation than anything else. Because ultimately the sun rules the person, and the sun is in Aries. So the person is a lot stronger than they are presenting themselves as. Especially, I really believe that the ascendant starts to lose sway over the person's basic personality past the age of 30, after the first Saturn return. And I feel that they grow into the sun sign. But until that time, especially when they may be much more like the Cancer part of themselves, you may have a tendency to really have a habit of being very expressive about being hurt about something. Somebody didn't remember your birthday. Somebody didn't call you when you were hoping that they would. And there can be a theme of not getting your emotional needs met. But you may find that people are not very receptive to this. And for those Aries people who have this combination, you may learn from this and realize that you're going to turn off people more than you're ever going to get your needs met if you come across this way. It can be very smothering to other people. And actually, Aries as a sun sign can be very freedom loving and, be perfectly capable of granting freedom to their beloved. And they might not be very hypocritical about that. They might be like, yeah, you have your adventure too. But when you have that Cancer rising, especially if the person did not get their emotional needs met as a child, it can definitely be tricky, and the person can feel that they have to make up for lost time, and they can look to their partner to provide that for them, and that can create problems too. So, that's why I say, in terms of professions, the things that jump out at me are the artist and the early childhood teacher. If you have children, I don't want to really talk too much about that, because I don't think the rising sign is going to be really coming into play with a lot of these things, and even with career matters. um, I really I really think that there are so many things that Aries people can do, but I wanted to touch upon those two things with teaching and with artistic endeavors, because I think that those are like no-brainers in a lot of cases. But I do feel like in love that this combination has to really learn to have more restraint. And that means emotional restraint and not going off on someone because they said something that you might have taken offense to, but really get curious and ask, what that person meant, and not jump to conclusions. Aries people tend to be hasty, and that can come back to bite you in the butt sometimes. Also, the idea of, yeah, like I said, the sense of somebody owing you anything on the emotional level. Like, sometimes people think that if they get involved in a relationship, that that person has to show up in a certain way. And of course, there are certain things that we do have expectations about, but some people are very demanding about how that person shows affection, and it's almost like they need proof. They require proof that somebody really loves them. And I really think that if people do not get a handle on tendencies like this, it can make it very hard to, even if you attract someone, it may be hard to keep that relationship going, because they may feel like they have to fulfill a certain thing for you in order to be acceptable. And yet, everyone has their own natural way of doing things. And a person may love you and they may not express it in the traditional way, but it doesn't mean that they love you any less than somebody who's very uh, easy in terms of being able to flatter somebody. It doesn't mean that they really mean what they're saying. They could be completely insincere, but they just um, are a great schmooze artist, if you will. I do think that this is a dynamic combination. I think that whenever you have Aries, you're dealing with somebody who has oodles of energy, and other people may really feel energized in your presence as a result. With Cancer rising, being aware of when you are out of sorts, and maybe that is the day to rest or to kind of keep to oneself rather than trying to mingle with others and having it be a not so pleasant experience for them. Because nobody likes to feel like they owe someone their undying devotion. People like to feel free in the context of relationships. And Cancer, that crab that with the claws, is very tenacious. trying to get somebody to love them and maybe get legally married to them. But I think that you are a born romantic. And I think that the only thing that you have to be very aware of is picking the right person, because that can lead to not only harmony in your relationship, but your relationship has more of a purpose. You know, when people are not on the same page, their relationship, I think it flounders because they're just not a unified field. Okay, well, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.